In the first unit, we talked a little bit about quartiles when we were building our box and whisker plots. And the quartiles are a way of dividing up your data into 4 equal chunks or segments. And so we have Q1, Q2, Q3 as our dividing points, representing 25% of the way, 50% of the way, and 75% of the way through the data. When we did our box plot, we also calculated the IQR, the interquartile range, and that's just taking Q3 and subtracting Q1, and that, remember, was the range of the values in the box part of the box and whisker plot. In this lesson, we're also going to talk about some other ways of dividing up the data, including percentiles, which you may have heard because they're a little bit more commonly used. You may have heard someone say they're in the 90th percentile, in their class or in their height, things like that. And so those are a little bit more familiar to us. So let's just do a quick review of the ones that we have talked about already. If we have our data here for final grades in the science class and we want to find the range, then we first need to locate the lowest number and the highest number, the minimum and the maximum in our data set. And so the lowest number is 43, the highest number appears to be 90, and so our range goes from 43 to 90, and what we do is subtract those two values, and we state the range as the difference between those two values. Now, for the rest of the measures of spread, the Q2 median, the Q1, the Q3, and the interquartile range, we're first going to need to have our numbers written in order from lowest to highest. So let's do that. So I've gone ahead and done that while the video was on pause to save time. And don't forget to cross out your numbers as you're using them. And so I found myself that I had missed the number 67 because I didn't cross it out and it was still there, so I had to go back and squeeze it in. And also I can see that I have missed the number 84, and so we need to squeeze that number in between 81 and 84 also. And so it's also a very good idea to count. In this case, we have 2 times 8, we have 16 pieces of data. So just count again when you've written them out from lowest to highest and make sure that you still have 16 pieces of data before you begin. All right, and so the median, remember, is our halfway point. And the way that we start to look for the median is we just said we had 16 pieces of data, and that's our n. And we're going to use that n, and we're going to put it into this little formula, n plus 1 over 2. So 16 plus 1 over 2 is 17 over 2. So that's going to give us 8.5. And that tells us that we're going to find the median in the 8.5th spot in our list of data. That is not the median itself. That's just the position or the place that we're going to find the median. So we're going to count in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. And of course there's no number in the 8.5 spot, and so we have to figure out what that number would be, which would be halfway between our values 71 and 72. So it appears that our median would be 71.5 in that case. So there's our median. Now we've created sort of 2 distinct groups of data, and we're going to look at them on their own. So we're going to go all the way up to 71 here from 43. And then on the other side, on the right-hand side of our data, we're going to go from 72 up to 90. And Q1 is the 25% mark, or the quarter of a way through the data mark, but it's really also the median of the first half of our data. And so if we have 8 numbers in our list, then we would be looking for the 8 plus 1 over 2, or the 4.5th number in our list. So again, we're going to count over 4, and there's no number in between 4 and 5, so we have to figure out what that number would be by averaging these two numbers, 59 and 62. So if we add those together, we get 121, and we're going to divide that by 2, and that's going to be 60 decimal 5. And so our Q1 value is 60 decimal 5. Even though that's not one of the numbers in our data list, it's still the first quartile value. For the third quartile, we're going to do exactly the same thing. We're going to need, this time, the 4.5th data point from the right-hand side. So we're going to count in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So halfway in between 78 and 81 is where we're going to find Q3. So we have 159 divided by 2, and that's going to give us 79.5. And so Q3 is 79.5. And again, that number is not actually one of the pieces of data in our data set, but it is the third quartile value. The interquartile value is just the difference between Q3 and Q1, so 79.5 minus 60 decimal 5, and so our IQR in this case is 19. Okay, for this example, we've got the number of calories in an ice cream bar versus the cost when they're deciding which product to buy. So we've got an N of 22. And so let's just make a note here that N equals 22. And these are all vanilla flavored ice cream bars with their calories. And so note that the bars varied in size, and some of the smaller bars had fewer calories. Okay, so there are 22. If we want to find the median, we have to find the halfway point. And so remember to use our formula, and that's 22 plus 1 divided by 2. That's going to give us the position. And so 23 over 2, and that's equal to 11.5. So if we count over and we find the 11th and the 12th numbers, then we're going to find the halfway point in between them. So I think we have 8 on each row. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, and 12. So the 11th is 209, and the 12th is 234. We're just going to average those. We want the halfway point in between them. So we're going to get 441 over 2. And that gives us 220.5. So that's our P50, but also our median and also our Q2, because they're all the same thing. If I want Q1, then I'm going to do it a little bit differently. I'm going to do 22 plus 1, but this time I want just the first quarter of the data. So I have 23 over 4. And that's 5.75. So now I'm going to look for the fifth number, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's 151. And so I'm going to start with 151, and I'm going to add 0.75 times the difference between 179 and 151, because they're the two numbers in the fifth and the sixth spot. And so 151 plus 3/4 of the difference between, sorry, that's not 151, is it? Oh yeah, minus 151, sorry. What's that, 28, okay, and 3/4 of 28 is 21, so I get 151 plus 21, which is 172 for my Q1 value. For P75, I'm going to do 3/4 of 22 plus 1, which is 23, or you can multiply by decimal 75 if you want, same thing. And so we end up here with 69 over 4, and so that's equal to 17.25. And so in that case, we want to count over to the 17th value. So 17 is here at 319. We're going to take 319, and then we're going to add 0.25 of the difference between 337 and 319. All right, so that's 319 plus 0.25 times 18, so 1/4 of 18. 4.5 times 0.25, so that's going to be 319 plus 4 point, what do we have? 4.5, I think, and that ends up being 323.5 for Q3. Okay, I'm doing these calculations in my head. I may have gotten the decimal wrong there. You can check that. All right, so for P40, for the 40th percentile, we're going to do the same thing, but this time we're going to multiply 0.40, because that's the 40th percentile, 40 out of 100, times our 23 to find the position. And so that's going to give us 9.2. So we want to count over to the 9th number, and that's our starting point. So 197 plus 0.2 of the difference between 201 and 197, which is 4. And so that's 197 plus 0.8, and that's 197.8. Sorry. 197.8. That is super messy. Sorry about that. Okay, so that's how we find the percentiles, the median, the quartiles. Everything can break down to percentiles because that's the smallest value of measurement. And so it's easier if we look at it, I think, from that perspective every single time. You can get some practice working on quartiles, percentiles on the worksheet that's posted, and let me know if you need any help.